Another innovation of the Ashbury Entertainment Complex in 1986 was the Boy in a Box. A highly controversial exhibit, this enclosure is no longer a feature of the theatre, these being the types of exhibit which come and go with the whims of fashion and the moral economy. Many of the Ashbury's displays have now naturally moved on to the internet. Boys in boxes are common there now. If you search diligently, perhaps you will find an example to match the quality of the original. The original Boy in a Box was located in a square room at the end of the Ashbury cubicled arcade. This larger container was lined with a series of black theatrical drapes which served to cushion the atmosphere against intrusion by any stray light or sound from outside. The ceiling of the room was gently padded with baffles. All was quiet and still. Entering this sacred space was like walking into a comfortably padded cell in a psychiatric institution or a church. The patrons processed around the central object of the room slowly and with respect, rather like the crown jewels if you've ever been to the Tower of London. Customers breathed gently and deeply. The air was thick and always warm. The room itself hummed like a chant or necromantic séance. In the middle of the room, in a pale, dedicated light, about 5 feet above the floor, floated the head of a young man. At first, this head seemed detached from any body, ghostly and ethereal, an unsupported hologram, until your eyes adjusted to the light, and it became apparent that the boy's head actually emerged from a finite black square. The rest of him hung in a cube at the centre of the square room. It gradually dawned on any naive patron that this was indeed a boy in a box. The boy's body was all inside this cube, except for his head, which levitated incorporeal on its platter. A dark rubber collar around the boy's neck sealed his body away. The boy did not speak. Nobody spoke. That was one of the rules. The sides of the cube were parallel to the walls of the room, with 3 feet of space around for circumambulation. Just as a newcomer to the room might begin to ask himself, "Is this all there is, a head on a platter?" he would notice indentations in the faces of the cube, depressed circles like black rounds on a black dice, scarcely legible but darkly glimmering. These beckoned. They offered an opening for your arms. Through them your hands were led into sleeves, and thence to gloves. The fingertips of the gloves were of the thinnest, finest silk, as sensitive as skin, so communicative of texture and warmth that they almost disappeared. You could reach for the boy and touch him out of sight. The smoothness of his skin could be felt, his heat adduced. You could delve the nests beneath his arms while looking at his illuminated face. You could gently twist the baubles of his nipples. The lean and muscle of his stomach and thighs could be gauged, palpated, visualized, the curling of his pubic hair. His testicles could be touched so close you could almost taste them. The firm or limpness of his cock could be quickly grasped. There were slots on each face of the die for the passing through of bills. With a pat and a smile and the right denomination, the young man could be persuaded to raise himself from the stool on which he sat, and you could feel beneath. The boy could not be rotated, but you could move to the other apertures of the cube. This arrangement made for a silent ambulation as customers processed around, touching and folding, completing a picture. At the end of his working day, though boys could come and go as they pleased, there were no set hours, The unpredictable worker unbolted the box and stepped outside, like a man stepping out from a personal sauna. As he opened the wings of the cube, the room flooded with fluorescent light. A light, to keep the boy warm, was hidden and sealed within the box. It now illuminated the mirrored floor of the unit, so the boy, who could be anything up to 30 years old, could see to pick up his cash and clothes. Before making his way to the green room to dress, the worker replaced the gloves at the end of the groping sleeves with fresh, disposable pairs. He then might chat a few moments with the colleague who was waiting to relieve him, before taking his money away and getting on with the rest of his life. Unknown to most workers, there was a secret basement of the Ashbury Theatre. Managers will always be making extra cash. This was the most expensive, and therefore most exclusive, area of the Ashbury suites. This cellar room was always dark, from its side. It was strictly dark because the floor of the box in the room above was semi-silvered glass, a one-way mirror, and while little of the box's light was visible to the punters in the room above, every seam of escape in that direction being tightly sealed, a torrent of magnesium poured through the sheen of the floor and cast its illuminating way down here. Down here there was a reclining chair, centered in the elevator shaft of light descending from the floor above. On this chair a single voyeur at a time could lie back and gaze, from this quiet distance, upward at the spectacle in the higher room. A headless boy, perching on a perspex stool and surrounded by fondling, nameless hands. A wealthy man could lie back undisturbed and contemplate his private privilege. He could watch as anonymous fingers felt and explored the flesh which hung from the roof of a tiny room aloft. And just as that neck-down body dangled from the roof of that tiny room, just so the genitals also dangled down over the edge of their perspex seat, handfuls of ripe fruit, while you gazed up from the pit below. And the transparent chair the boy sat upon showed his squashing folds, sweet chariot. And you knew that no one knew that you were there beneath, secretly watching, looking up from that underground place. And when a client above paid 100 greenbacks to bring the boy off, although that client could look the boy in the eyes, you alone could enjoy the dollar bills slapping to the floor.